One of the most terrifying moments in From Season 4, Episode 4 is when Julie finally comes face to face with the man in yellow during her latest story walking attempt. On the surface, the scene looks simple. Julie enters another timeline, sees the man in yellow feeding on a corpse, he notices her, and she escapes. But when you really break down the details, this moment may have secretly revealed how Julie's powers actually work and why she could become the most important person in the entire town. Because the biggest question isn't just how did Julie see the man in yellow? The real question is, why did he see her? That changes everything. Up until now, Julie's story walking abilities seemed almost passive. Whenever she entered the ruins or experienced one of her seizures, it felt like she was observing fragments of the town's past or future, like a ghost watching events unfold. But episode 4 completely destroys that idea. The moment Julie enters that older timeline, seemingly connected to Victor's childhood cycle and Miranda's death, the man in yellow reacts instantly. He stops feeding and turns toward her like he senses something invading the space. That means Julie isn't invisible when she story walks. She physically or spiritually exists inside those timelines. And honestly, that makes her powers far more dangerous than we originally thought. What makes this scene even crazier is how differently the man in yellow behaves compared to episode 1. Earlier in the season, when he confronted Julie, he acted familiar with her. He even said, "We have to stop meeting like this." That line sounded casual, almost playful, like these encounters had happened multiple times before. It implied a history between them. But in episode 4, he doesn't recognize her at all. Instead, he reacts like she's just another random survivor stumbling into his feeding ground. At first, this seems like a continuity mistake, but I actually think the show is doing this intentionally. The key is understanding that Julie is not moving through time in a normal linear way. She's moving through fragmented chapters of the town's story. That's why the episode keeps hammering the audience with story-related language, storywalker, chapters, bookmarks, revisiting stories. The town itself behaves less like a physical location and more like a living narrative, and Julie is somehow learning how to navigate it. So when she enters that timeline in episode 4, it may actually be the first time the man in yellow has ever encountered her chronologically. Meanwhile, from Julie's perspective, it happens after their episode 1 interaction. In other words, Julie's timeline is ahead. The man in yellow's timeline is behind it more. They're crossing paths out of order. That's why both scenes can exist without contradicting each other. And honestly, this might be the biggest clue yet that From is not really about time travel. It's about overlapping realities and repeating stories. The town doesn't seem trapped in a traditional loop where events endlessly repeat the same way. Instead, it feels like multiple cycles are bleeding into each other. Past, present, and future aren't fully separated anymore. That would explain why objects appear randomly, why visions happen, why Miranda painted things before they occurred, why Ethan somehow understands mythical locations like the Lake of Tears, and why Julie can physically enter different chapters of the town's existence. She's not traveling through history, she's walking through layers of the same story. And the man in yellow may be the only entity fully aware of that system. That's another reason this scene matters so much. The regular creatures hunt people physically. They stalk, manipulate, and torture survivors, but they still behave almost like animals following routines. The man in yellow feels completely different. He understands, he adapts, he infiltrates emotionally and psychologically. Victor's revelation later in the episode makes this even scarier. Victor admits that he once thought the man in yellow was a normal resident. That means the man in yellow can perfectly blend in with humans whenever he wants. He doesn't just kill people, he studies them, manipulates them, tests them, and now we know he can apparently detect storywalkers too. The second Julie enters that timeline, he notices her presence immediately. That suggests storywalking leaves some kind of disturbance inside the town's reality. Almost like Julie is tearing through the fabric of the cycle every time she enters another chapter. That could explain why the ruins are so dangerous. Maybe the ruins are not portals. Maybe they're weak points between timelines. And every time Julie enters them, she risks attracting the attention of something ancient that exists across all versions of the town simultaneously. That something may be the man in yellow himself. There's actually a terrifying theory forming here. What if the man in yellow remembers every cycle? Think about it. The creatures seem repetitive and trapped in routines, but the man in yellow behaves like someone who has seen this happen countless times before. He understands human psychology too well. He knows exactly how to manipulate fear, grief, guilt, and hope. And most importantly, he recognized Julie before she recognized him. That's huge. It suggests he may perceive the timeline differently from everyone else. While humans experience the cycles linearly, the man in yellow may experience them all at once. That would explain why he appears calm, why he seems almost amused by the survivors, why Victor fears him more than the other monsters, why he manipulates people instead of simply killing them. He already knows how most stories end, and Julie may be the first person capable of disrupting that pattern. That's why their connection matters so much. The man in yellow didn't just attack Julie because she was there. He attacked her because she represents a threat. A person capable of moving outside the normal rules of the cycle could potentially rewrite the story itself, and the show subtly hints at this through Julie's failed bookmark experiment. Her goal was simple: leave a mark in another timeline and track it later, but the experiment fails because the paper returns blank. At first, this seems like proof the idea doesn't work, but I think the scene secretly proves the opposite. Julie did affect the timeline. The problem is that the man in yellow interfered before the process finished. Notice how quickly she panics after seeing him. She drops the bookmark almost immediately, and Randall pulls her back out before she fully stabilizes inside that chapter. The interruption may have broken the connection, which means Julie's method might actually work later, and if it does, she could become capable of intentionally traveling between cycles. That's terrifying because it opens the door to something much bigger: changing events, saving people, preventing deaths, possibly even altering the cycle itself. But there's also a darker possibility. What if every time Julie enters another chapter, she weakens the barrier between timelines? That could explain why the town feels increasingly unstable this season. Objects appear and disappear, people hear voices again, past symbols return, the trees move faster, the man in yellow becomes more active. Maybe Julie's powers aren't fixing the cycle, maybe they're accelerating its collapse. And if that's true, then her encounter with the man in yellow in episode 4 may have been the moment the town realized she was becoming dangerous. Not dangerous to the survivors, dangerous to the story itself. In the end, Julie seeing the man in yellow may be the biggest turning point in From Season 4 so far. The scene proves her story-walking abilities are far more dangerous than simple visions or time travel. She can physically enter different chapters of the town's history, and the man in yellow can see her moving through them. That means Julie is no longer just a survivor trapped inside the cycle. She's becoming someone capable of disrupting it. And if the man in yellow truly exists across every timeline at once, then Julie may be the first person the town has encountered who can actually challenge its rules.